term iconic gets bandied around quite a lot when it comes to cars. In some cases though, it probably is the correct word to use. Cars like the Mini, for example, or the E-Type Jaguar, replacing an icon is very controversial. I mean, can you imagine if you decided to refresh Buckingham Palace and brought in Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen? Just like the Mini before it, the Defender reached a point where it started to become unviable to develop the platform any further, and a new car was needed. This was a very sensitive task to undertake, and head of design at Land Rover, Jerry McGovern, knew this, that he had to come up with something that was sympathetic to the original, but not harnessed by it. So, is this new generation of Land Rover Defender true enough to the original, but truly a world car for the 21st century? I think we better find out. Being a 21st century Land Rover, they've done away with the old body-on-frame design. The new D7X architecture makes this car much lighter than it would be on a like-for-like size vehicle if it had the body-on-frame. It also makes it 3 times stiffer, in fact the stiffest body structure of any Land Rover product at the time of launch. It also allowed for this vehicle to have a fully independent suspension setup as well. And you can certainly feel it when you're driving on the road. I mean, it's still a big heavy car, but the steering does feel quite direct, there's no dead spots in there. And as I say, even though it is a big heavy car, there is a little bit of body roll, but it certainly doesn't feel as disconcerting as some of the more agricultural off-roaders of the past. You've got an 815mm tyre circumference, giving it a larger contact patch than any Land Rover previously. As expected, the platform does allow for a broad range of engine options, including some petrol hybrid models, though I imagine most people will probably opt for the diesel models like this one here. This one is the D250 option, and to be brutally honest, I think it's got more than enough power for what most people will want. It does employ some mild hybrid technology as well, and it does, the car does shift. It gives you a 0 to 60 time a little over 8 seconds, which I think is more than quick enough for any large four-wheel drive vehicle. So the capacity of this diesel engine is actually 3 litres and it's a 6-cylinder, and it is silky smooth. It's also got 570 newton metres of torque as well, so it really does feel a lot more than the sum of its numbers, to be brutally honest. Of course, if none of those engine options are quite powerful enough for you, well, there are some V8 options as well. There was one with around 500 horsepower, and most recently they've actually introduced the Opta model. That vehicle has over 700 newton metres of torque, in excess of 600 horsepower, and a 0 to 60 time of under 4 seconds, which I find actually quite daunting in a Land Rover of all things. But I'm sure there'll be a market for it, and but yeah, you will certainly need deep pockets for one of those, because the starting price is from around £145,000, which is a hell of a lot of money for any car. Now, the two V8 options that are actually on sale currently, they are actually different engines. The 500 horsepower is the JLR unit. The new one in the Opta is actually a BMW derived engine. Now, most of us are never really going to do any serious off-roading, and I have seen some spectacular footage of these cars in places like Africa doing some really serious off-roading. Now, this particular vehicle has got air suspension on, which is actually a £1,600 option. You can also get these cars on springs, but it gives it a really good range of adaptability. So here I'm riding along at normal height, doing about 20 miles an hour on this quite badly rutted road surface. And yeah, it's soaking up the bumps on this gravel quite well, but what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to stick it in off-road height mode, and what that'll do is give us a lot more ground clearance. So I just press this button here on the dashboard next to the gear lever and hold that off-road height selected. So this will give us 291mm of ground clearance, a 38-degree approach angle, 28 breakover angle and a 40-degree departure angle. Now, this car has Land Rover's Terrain Response 2 system, which we saw something a bit like this initially on Discovery. And I'm a complete novice when it comes to off-road driving, but I remember seeing Land Rover's hill descent control system on Discovery 3, and it looked very, very impressive. So yeah, I thought it'd be great to see what this is like on here. So I'm a complete novice, and I'm now at an angle where I must say I'm feeling very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, it's completely lapping it up. It's a fully configurable system, is this, but I've just left it in automatic and let it do its thing. Another thing to note, yes, it is dry here at the moment, but this car is on conventional road tyres, and it's just climbed that bank. I think that's quite impressive, as I say, considering I've not done any off-road driving before. So as you can see, the Terrain Response 2 system on this vehicle, even on the standard road tyres, this car's way more capable than I'm ever going to need it to be. It's also got wave sensing on here as well, which again, unless I owned a car like this and we had flash floods, it's not something I'm probably ever likely to do. But it does have class-leading wading capabilities of 900mm, and it's quite clever. It can actually monitor the water level outside the car as well, so that's really, really slick. Now, most people obviously will be using vehicles like this for things like school runs and generally lugging stuff around and just general family life. So this gives me the opportunity to nip down here and fetch something to my allotment. It's actually quite a narrow gate, but yeah, these mirrors are quite big, so it's great to see to reverse. The other thing I like about these is when you actually engage reverse gear, the mirrors actually do drop down a bit as well, to show you more of the side of the vehicle and what's approaching. Obviously this camera system's quite tricky in here as well, so this shows you all sorts of information on here. So yeah, obviously as a truck driver I'm used to using my mirrors, but to anyone that relies on this sort of thing, yes, pretty impressive stuff actually. Right, let's get some stuff unloaded. So we've got this great big door that hinges from one side on Defender, very typical for off-road vehicles. The only drawback, of course, is if you get in a tight spot and you haven't got all this space to open the door out, but that's just one of those things. Obviously it's assisted by this gas strut as well, some storage in here as well. Big spare wheel on the back of the car, obviously that can obscure visibility a little bit. There is an option pack where you can have a camera and it displays in your rear view mirror as well. This vehicle doesn't have that, but it is available. Nice flat load area in here, we've got a bit of space under there as well. This is actually a 7-seat version in this car, so this one's actually got some seats there. Central bench that obviously splits and folds down nice and flat, unlike Grenadier, which has batteries under the back seat and the seats don't fold flat in that one. So yeah, that's definitely a point to Defender. So if you do struggle with the loading height of this vehicle, you can actually adjust the air suspension from the back here. Not just useful for loading and unloading, but if you had the optional tow bar on this vehicle and you were hitching a trailer, that'd be brilliant, because you could raise the suspension to meet the tow ball. Just press and hold that button there and you can see the back of the vehicle starts lowering down. All pretty good stuff. Certainly benefiting from this nice flat area with no load lip for unloading heavy items like this. Obviously somewhere you won't normally see on one of my review videos, but yeah, this is my allotment. So my greenhouse where I grow things on, and obviously all my raised beds, my rather impressive looking corn over there. Now I actually start a lot of my seedlings at home, so that corn, several months ago I fetched that down here when it was about that high, and obviously I had to put it in the boot of the car. Such as Defender would be ideal for this sort of thing, for bags of compost. If you've got anything big and heavy to lug around, Defender will just swallow it up, and when you want to use it as a family car, it'll do that as well. Just while we're on the outside of this vehicle, Pangaea green, I think this colour looks absolutely fantastic on this car. This one's spec with a black roof as well. I have seen Defenders with body coloured roofs as well. This one is the SE trim, and it's the dynamic X pack on this one, and we've got things like this gloss black around the bottom. There are various option packs, some with black detailing, some with more bright work on. I suppose if you were using it as a really rugged roughy tufty off-road and you were going to be scuffing things up a lot, you'd probably go for a more standard looking grey plastic trim, but let's face it, a lot of these cars are probably going to be city dwellers anyway. Certainly looks the part though, doesn't it? Styling wise, of course, this is a ground up all new design, but they've done a really good job of retaining this sort of family face. It does look very reminiscent of old Defender, just reinvented, which is what they were going for. So styling wise, I think they've really hit the nail on the head. Obviously there are options as well, like LED headlamps like this vehicle's got on as well, which do give the car quite a distinctive look, and yeah, I think that'll be a popular upgrade on a lot of vehicles. Only thing I'm less sure about that might be a little bit style over substance is this checker plate on here, which is plastic, and yeah, you're not going to be climbing on there to unload your roof rack, I wouldn't have thought. This one's on the 20-inch satin dark grey wheels as well, and as I say, this car's got standard road tyres, but you can actually option off-road tyres if you feel you really do need them. Anyway, let's have a look inside. As you would expect in the back of Defender, there is bags of room in here. You could easily sit 3 people abreast in the back of here. As I say, this is actually a 7-seat option. You can actually get a jump seat in front as well. I think it's about an £800 option. If you're using it as a commercial type vehicle, that's probably great as an occasional seat. Obviously it comes with some USBs in the back and a cup holder and everything. But I think most people, certainly using them as family vehicles, 5 or 7 seat option is probably going to be the most common. We've actually got not only fresh air vents in here, but we've got climate controls there and USB ports as well. So that should be enough to keep the kids happy on any long journey. And this piece here, this is actually a structural component that actually goes across the width of the vehicle. We've got this nice sturdy grab handle as well, so if you're loading your roof rack, for example, you've got that to pull on. And yeah, just to demonstrate, you can really give that some welly and it's not going to fall off. One thing before we move on, I just wanted to mention these towing eyes here. Obviously these are a permanent attachment, they're not the kind of thing you just sort of screw in and remove. Snatch rating on these, I've actually had some mixed information. Somewhere I've read said 10 tonne front, 9 tonne rear, somewhere else I read was 7 tonne, but even if it was 7 tonne, that's a hell of a snatch rating on there. I mean, you're gonna pull a heck of a lot with that. The actual towing capacity of this vehicle is rated at 3.7 tonnes as well, so again, pretty impressive. One thing that's quite impressive actually is this infotainment system. Pivot Pro, it's Land Rover's latest generation of software, and yeah, it's a fantastic system. It's quite intuitive to use. As you'd expect, it's got all things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it's just a really nice slick system, really easy to use. There's no sort of delay, it's responsive. But some systems you're sort of tapping away on them and not a lot's happening, but yeah, I can see why this is an award-winning system. Now, cars are becoming ever more advanced, even things a bit more utilitarian like the Defender, and what you really don't want to be doing is having to visit a garage regularly because some sensor's got its knickers in a twist and things aren't working as they should be. This vehicle is equipped with software over the air, or SOTA for short, and yeah, you can actually get updates to this car remotely without actually having to go near your Land Rover dealership, which is all pretty impressive stuff. Yeah, even on this short stretch of dual carriageway, it's just effortless how this vehicle sort of picks up and joins traffic. I can see now why these are so popular as family cars. I've never been into off-road vehicles, and I'm certainly not into a lot of these modern all-show and no-go SUVs that seem to prove so popular these days. But the Defender has always been a bit different. It's been somehow more purposeful. Would I buy one personally? Well, probably not, but there's a good reason for that, and that's the price. It's certainly not a cheap vehicle. I mean, no vehicles are today, but this one, well, it costs more than most. Prior to this, the most expensive car I'd reviewed on this channel was the Chevy Corvette, which when it was new was £60,000. £60,000 is a lot of money, but that's a Corvette, and when you look at a lot of other supercars, it's a comparative bargain. This vehicle, well, these start from just over £60,000, which is a big old chunk of money. Vehicle as tested here though, well, you're looking in excess of £70,000. Things like the air suspension, £1,600, and the options go on and on. You could very easily find yourself at £100,000 with a vehicle like this, just by ticking a few options if you're not careful. Saying that, there are some very good options to have, so you just need to do your homework and be really selective about what you want, what you value most in the vehicle. I do have mixed emotions about Defender though, but not for the reasons you might think. Not so much the passing of old Defender, because as much as we all did love it, they didn't call Land Rover owners the Bonnet Up Club at off-roading events for no reasons. They were very agricultural, they probably weren't the most reliable of vehicles, but they had character. This new Defender though, well, it's got all that character still in spades, but it's also refined. It ticks all the boxes. They've really hit the nail on the head. No, the reason I'm left a little bit sad and bewildered is where you're going to use the vehicle. Take for example this lane I'm on now. It's an old track that runs between some fields along the outskirts of town. And it used to be a gravel track, but not anymore. Today it's a tarmac road, and it's very nice and all. It's a quiet road. People bring their dogs down here to walk, and it's not long after you get out of the fields that you're into new housing estates. Our countryside seems to be shrinking at an alarming rate, and I do wonder how I would justify the use of one of these vehicles. I think for some people that can really make use of a Defender, there's probably no comparison. There's nothing else out there that's as well rounded, that ticks all the boxes in the same way that this vehicle does. But yeah, to spend that £60,000 or £70,000, I think you've really got to be able to make a compelling argument for it. The other question it raises for me as well is what will become of Discovery, because back in '89 when Discovery launched, we had the Range Rover, which was the somewhat wallowy but also very plush 4x4, and then we had Defender, which was always very utilitarian, quite archaic in fact compared to the vehicle that we're in now. Discovery really did plug an important gap in the market, but that gap seems to have been squeezed a bit now. The whole range of Land Rovers just seems to have gone a little bit more up market, and like I say, that really does beg the question, if this is such a great family car, are you going to opt for one of these, or are you going to opt for a Discovery at similar money? I think that's really going to come down to personal preference. To make any real saving, you're probably going to have to go for a Discovery Sport, or in fact, alarmingly, the cheapest product in the Land Rover range, or should I say the lowest entry point, is probably more accurate into Land Rover, is actually a vehicle with a Range Rover badge on. That would be the Range Rover Evoque. Again, a much smaller car, I think a bit more of a lifestyle vehicle. But yeah, again, it does beg the question, doesn't it? Are you going to spend £60,000 on Discovery, or are you going to go for Defender? Well, decision's yours. I hope I've given you enough information on that to make an educated decision. If you've enjoyed the video, do please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to view videos like this a little bit earlier than everyone else and see if some of the behind the scenes stuff, do consider a channel membership. For the price of a cup of coffee, £2.99, you can be part of an exclusive club. Thanks very much for watching, and I will join you soon on the next video. It's goodbye from me.